Hey, Keandra.
Hello, Celia.
Yay, I'm so excited to be with you and
Me
just spend
too.
some time shooting back and forth ideas. The whole intention behind really having these conversations with real women is taking all of the amazing women in my life, bringing them out into the world and really sharing their stories and sharing their voices and getting a little bit behind the scenes of what it's like when we're just hanging out talking. So
Love it.
you and I have known each other for a while, and so I know that we're going to get a chance to dig deep into a lot of different stuff. But since not everybody knows you who's joining in, I'm just going to do your brief bio, and then I'll give you a chance also to add in anything good that's coming up for you. Uh,
Okay.
so we are so lucky to be joined with Keandra Doss today. And she is a vibrant, fun, and graceful woman. This is how her friends think of her. Through holistic self-care practices, Keandra partners with professional women to raise their level of self-concept, connect with their inner radiance, and ignite a personal relationship with themselves in order to reach new levels of freedom. And as a woman who has healed herself from depression, we got to talk about that one, and low self-worth, she's a firm believer in the power of self-care to transform the mind, body, and spirit. Keandra
Mhm.
is passionate about encouraging women to make themselves a priority and engage in a self-care lifestyle that will help them anchor their personal needs before serving the world. And currently she lives in LA, whoop whoop, and is a former corporate human resources manager and is a certified life coach as well. She also is a retreat leader, speaker, world traveler, and spa enthusiast. So we are so blessed to have you here with us today. Is there anything that is coming up for you, just you want to say to me or to the people listening in?
Well, I just want to say I love you to pieces, and I'm honored that you wanted to have this candid and real conversation with me. I think I've always just admired how you even pull out of me that just be real, just be raw, girl, just be who you are, fall apart, like just do it.
That's
And
right.
it's so necessary to it's necessary, but it's also great to be in the presence of women who give you that permission. And it's really a safe place. There's no judgment. There's no expectations. It's just, look, just let it all fall out. This is how it is. And so I honor and thank you.
Yes,
And
it's so wonderful. And I think what you're saying is so important because part of why I was inspired to do this series is because I think that, especially for women who are trying to find their way in society right now, whether it's in corporate America or in a professional setting or becoming an entrepreneur or being a stay-at-home mom or a community leader, or activist, or whatever it is, there's so much pressure on us to fit a certain mold and also to be like juggling 20 things at one time and just overwhelming ourselves. And I know that this is something that's near and dear to your heart, coming from a
mhm,
corporate background,
mhm.
transitioning into full-time entrepreneurship, but everything in between. Can you tell a little bit about your story, like where you came from, the quick version of how you grew up and how you found your way to where you are now?
Sure. So I am originally from Oakland, California. Woo woo, Bay Area. But went to UC Davis, and shortly after I graduated from there, I moved down here to LA. Fell into initially I was trying to move to the East Coast, but that didn't work out, and so LA was initially just supposed to be a pit stop. I did not have any idea that I would still be here, and this would be now my home. But got here and got settled, got a job, and fell into just that typical I guess, way of what we're supposed to do with our lives. We're supposed to go to college, then get a good job, then, do your career, have fun, travel, then eventually get married, have kids, and, the whole nine. And so a lot of that path is one that I had been on. But while, I was in the midst of the journey, I found myself in my mid-20s just really depressed and really not really happy with certain decisions and not really feeling at peace with who I was. I, was going through just a series of some tragic loss. Lost a grandmother who was very near and close to me. Was dumped by a man that I was in love with, which maybe a couple years prior to that, I was, also dumped by a man that I was engaged to. So I just was basically experiencing just all these series of losses. And then it just caused me to just start to look around at my life and like realize that I wasn't happy. You know, I was doing well on a job, but, you know, I wasn't completely fulfilled and lit up, you know, at least at that time. I started getting adult acne and it just was just a lot of things that just seemed to be, you know, in the golden times of my life in my 20s, I just felt like it was, you know, some of the lowest moments. And so I started getting help. But the first thing that I started with was my skincare. And it was through that, just a very regimented process of products and these facials and just all of these different things. That was really the beginning of when I realized when you slow down and take the time to take care of yourself and you start to see the results, you do start to feel better. I was seeing the results in my skin, but there was something else that was happening internally where I was starting to feel more life, more invigorated, just seeing that, okay, I'm taking the time to take care of myself rather than being so focused on everybody else. And that was really just the beginning of the trajectory that then led me towards getting my master's in public administration, started, you know, getting social again instead of just being cooped up in my house, and started hanging out with friends and doing more trips and taking the time to travel and getting involved in dance and just doing all the things that were really important to me, sought out therapy and, you know, got help just all around. And then during the recession, the company that I was with, we basically shrunk down to about 39 people. I was one of the 39, and they asked me, hey, do you want to take over the HR department? And even though at the time I didn't feel that I was qualified for it, it was part of the work that I was already doing and felt like, hey, why not? You know, I don't have anything to lose, you know, at this point. And so I taken over the department and, you know, taken on that challenge. And thankfully we were able to grow, start growing again, emerged out of the recession. And I emerged as a leader and really just started to find my voice and finding my strengths and the gifts and the things that I was really good at. But in that process, I also really got clear on just my own personal journey and started to talk about that a little bit more and just felt more called, I guess, to share that with women and share it with people. And so I started doing that very gradually. There was another mentor that, you know, helped me with the healing, but also there were a few events and different things that we would partner on together that gave me, I guess, a platform, if you will, to really start talking about that more publicly. And it's definitely been a journey because I've always been a private person. And so even the fact that I'm doing this interview and the work that I'm now doing, to think that just the fact that I am now in this place where I feel okay with, like, this is who I am. This is what I've come with. This is my story. Take it or leave it, but this is what it is. And to be comfortable with that, I know that I've come a long way in my healing and in my journey. So that's the quick way, the quick story, I guess.
I know. Well, every time I talk to anybody and they say, you know, tell me about you or tell me your story, I'm always like, you know, what parts is there? There's so much that I can talk about. And you feel like, I think as a woman also, you start to feel self-conscious of like, am I talking too long? Am I saying too much? What should I say? What shouldn't I say? So I think that it's always fascinating to listen to those voices in your head. And that's part of what was making me think about while you were talking. I know you mentioned having depression, and I'm just wondering about your upbringing and sort of leading to the point of the depression. Like, what was your life growing up like? You know, did you have parents in your life, or was it a positive experience? You know, what did you have any limiting beliefs sort of that you started picking up from your early ages that led into later that maybe was a part of that depression? Because I think a lot of people listening want to hear the reality of, you know, of whatever we've been through, because a lot of what I'm hearing is like, oh, when people share their stories, they talk like, you know, they have their story of like when they were down, and then it's like they say that for like 10 seconds, and then before you know it, they're like, and it was all better, and I'm so happy now, yay! And so while I'm interested in giving the tips and the tools of how to be happy now, I also really want to talk about the reality of what it's like. And I think even in a bigger context of like how as a society we raise our kids, and sort of set them up for having certain issues later in life. So I'm just curious about
Yeah.
you. Do you have any reflections on that?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I was raised in a blended family. I am my mother's only child, but I do have a brother. We have the same father. Initially, in my early years, well, my mother was also married. She had remarried for the first time, and so I did have a stepfather in the home. But then, would go to my father's. Every weekend or every other weekend. I'm not really sure what the frequency was, but there was a point in my life where there was some regular, there was a relationship basically. And then he unfortunately got on drugs. And so while he was on drugs, my mother snatched me, back and was like, okay, can't really see him. And rightfully so. I mean, it really wasn't until I was older that I really got more understanding of why that happened. But, while I was going through it and as a child, there definitely were a lot of questions of like, okay, I'm no longer seeing my brother. I'm no longer seeing, this side of the family. We're moving from Oakland up into the suburbs and Pinole. And so I kind of understood on a surface level of what it was about of, getting me out of Oakland, getting me around more people, to where I could have a more, better future and just, being involved in better things. But there was a sense of like there were family and parts of me that were left behind and, just things that I didn't completely understand. But my mom's first marriage, or my first stepfather, he had a daughter, and it was really interesting because she was in our home every other weekend. And so basically it was like in the weekends I had a sibling, during the week I didn't. And so there was always this, dancing back and forth between both worlds. And I always saw myself as very blessed. I mean, I grew up among a lot of women, great aunts, my grandmothers, plural. So there were just a lot of strong women, but I was also the only baby for a while. So on my mother's side of the family, I really was just never had a need for anything. I would get 4 or 5 Easter baskets because I was the only baby for everybody. So, they would they basically wanted to shower someone or just be able to feel like, they were a part of my upbringing. And so, to a certain extent, I guess I was, spoiled by them. And then there was also the realities of like, okay, you have that reality during the week. And then on the weekends when you're stepsister, where you're with your brother, you're not. But then there was also these real interesting comparisons. I felt like, she definitely was a little bit more mild mannered than I was. I was always very expressive and kind of, had a loud voice, loud laugh. And, again, just, I don't know if it was because, I was, really, really nurtured and spoiled by, other family. And I don't think I was spoiled rotten. I think I always have been like a good, well-behaved kid. But there definitely wasn't ever a need, for anything. But all that to say, there was this comparison that I kind of felt was there. She, again, was more mild-mannered. I was, more boisterous, a little bit more mouthy and, would talk back. But even just in the dynamic in the sense of like, she was lighter skin, I was darker skin. I had more coily and coarse hair. She didn't. And so when we're just getting ready for church or getting ready to leave and my mom's having to do my hair or her hair, it was like just even little different things of the process that it taken just for my stuff to be tamed versus hers. And, if we went swimming or on vacation, like
Totally.
just all those little things, I totally noticed those comparisons very early on. And so I think subconsciously there were some things that that I basically held on to that carried into, my adulthood, into my 20s. And, we were pretty close throughout when I was younger through adolescence, but then there was unfortunately a betrayal to where we really don't have a relationship anymore.
Mm.
And
Keandra, I want to chime
yeah.
in there. And first of all, I'm sorry that you don't have a relationship with your sister right now, and life is long. And
Yeah.
I have two sisters, and I know about the highs and the lows of sisterhood. And I'm a big believer in sisterhood. So I hope and pray that you'll get back on track with her. But I wanted to bring up a couple of things just before we go any further that I'm curious about, because you said, well, two things. It's almost like the same thing, but saying it different ways. So you said when your mom got divorced and you left behind your stepfather, that there were pieces of you that you left behind. And so I'd love to the extent that you feel comfortable sharing any of that comes up for you. And then the other thing that you said is that from the experience with your stepsister and the comparisons, there were now pieces of you that changed, that you started to take on in terms of your beliefs. And so I'm curious about what part of Keandra got left behind, and what part of Keandra got shifted,
Yeah. I think the part of me that got left behind was really that sense of belonging to a certain extent. I look a lot like my father. I was a daddy's girl. We would go to breakfast every morning when he was healthy. We had a good relationship. And then when he wasn't, things changed. And so that part of my mother and my biological father were actually never married.
Okay.
So they actually were never together at all through any of my upbringing. So they always had this co-parent relationship. And that was always what I was familiar with them. But again, it wasn't until he got unhealthy on drugs where I just was, completely just snatched out of his life for good reasons, for good reasons. Now I understand that. But, at the time it was definitely very traumatizing, because there was a part of a belonging and an identity, that I had, with my stepsister, my stepfather, my mother. I kind of felt like I stuck out, like the sore thumb. I didn't look like
Right.
anyone,
Almost like you were joining into their family.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Whereas the family that you had come from before felt like yours. And like you said, you looked like your father, and it had the roots for you of
Exactly.
that support and that security, and that, like, this is my family. And then for that to change, and like you said, understandably, I'm sure a lot of people who are going to listen to this can completely relate, because, addiction in all of its many forms is completely a disease and is a sickness, but it totally tears up families. And, the women in our community, and the women that I work with, it's like time and time again, one way or the other, everybody has some of these stories of the severing early in life in their relationships, or the abandonment, or the addiction that comes in, and then the ripple effects of that coming later in life if they haven't dealt with it, which I heard you say very clearly. You've done lots of therapy, you've done lots of coaching, you've done lots of healing, and I'm sure there's still whispers of some of these things, but it's probably, you've probably done a lot of tremendous work on this. And I'm curious about that piece of, when you bring up the race issue and the comparisons between your sister, I can really relate to this, because I have two African-American daughters, that are my biological daughters, but I call them African-American because I believe in our society that, like they say, if you have 3 drops of blood, you're considered Black, and if we were to have slavery, or, if the police were to come or whatever, they would be looking at them like Black women. They wouldn't be like, oh, and they're half white, so therefore, it's different. And so all of that to say, though, because they are multicultural, and as we know, all cultures, but in particular in the Black community and culture, women and men come in every single different shade, every different type of, hair texture. And with my daughters, one of them's like slightly lighter than the other in terms of her complexion, and her hair curl pattern is like looser than the other. And they're both absolutely gorgeous. I've been so, like, because I've grown up in a predominantly Black community, I'm very familiar with all these issues. So as a mama, I've been like anticipating this and being like, okay, I'm going to be building them up on how beautiful they are equally. And, I love your hair. And which is true. And I'm like, to my daughter with the tighter curl pattern, I'm like, if I had your hair, I'd be wearing it like this, or like, even like yours, Keandra. I'd love to see her wearing it like a full natural, and she's embracing that side of herself. But I hear, like she'll say like, her sister's hair grows so much faster than her hair, or like she cut her hair off and now it's all the way long again. And I've never cut my hair one time.
Yeah.
Like I'm still waiting for it to like, and her hair is long, but for her, she's comparing it. And so as a mom, the best I can do is I've been trying to, have lots of different, African-American women that are influences in their life, including what I call like my bonus children, who are my stepchildren from my husband's first go round. So they have older sisters who are Black women who have all kinds of different things going on with their hair and their skin. And I've told them, I've said, look, I want you to be that, and even the broader community of Shannon and other people that are my girlfriends that I've said, I can teach them, but it's different coming from someone who looks like me, has skin like me, has hair like me. I think it doesn't like hit them in their core the same way it would be to have a whole array of beautiful Black women in their lives who are teaching them all different things about how to love themselves and, how to take care of their skin, how to take care of their hair and how it is beautiful and different. And that whole self-acceptance spectrum that we get on. And so when you were telling me that story of like some of the things you picked up from the labeling or the comparisons, can you share a little bit more of that, of how you took that later into life?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting because as you're talking about it, I'm like, man, for me, it was pretty recent. I've only been natural, not wearing my hair pressed or heat styled for maybe 7 or 8 years now, So in the 80s, it was harder. It was a lot harder. There weren't YouTube videos talking about, what product combinations to do.
Right.
And just on a larger scale, most women, unless you were rocking an afro, you weren't really natural. And also in the 80s, I remember very specifically that it was just more, even within the Black community, lighter skin was more reverenced or considered to be beautiful.
Right. Are you lighter than the paper bag thing,
Exactly.
And that's part of the impetus behind the conversations that I want to have is to have the conversations about the big things, about, what's alive. And I really believe that we're guided. And so whenever we go down a certain path, I want to go there. And I just feel like the race conversation is alive and well right now in our community. And what you're discussing is sort of that internalized oppression that happens within cultures, because again, take a beautiful, beautiful culture coming from Africa that has deep roots and history and customs and traditions and, ties and families and rituals and all this stuff. Take people away from that against their will, bring them to the United States and other countries where they're separated from their families, where they're taught that their ways are bad or, not okay here, not okay here. And if you keep going down that path, we're going to show you how we really feel about that, which, is through fear, right? You strip people of their cultural identity through that fear, but also through the painting the picture that assimilation into the American way or the American dream, which is really based on a standard by white men of what beauty is, of what a good person looks like, what whiteness means, which is a social construction, and then you take people and you bring them into that space and you basically teach them everything about them is not good. And a lot of people take that then to internalize it, to bring it out within their own communities, to use it as a weapon against each other of, I'm more attractive because I can straighten my hair and this is all my hair. But when you straighten your hair, it's only down to your chin. And so therefore clearly, I'm more fine and better than you, I just want to have the conversation because I think it's really interesting. And I think a lot of people are not privy to being inside of the world.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Is there
mm-hmm.
any on this that you can elaborate on? Because it's just hilarious because I grew up around all Black women. So I always wanted to have curly hair and darker skin. And then, having my daughters, I feel like I'm sort of getting to live vicariously through them, right? Of like, oh, you have the hair I always wanted. And, people used to joke, oh, that I was mixed. And, of course
Yeah.
I never went along with that. I'd be like, no, I'm not. I just, I have a tight ponytail. I'm wearing my earrings. Oh,
Uh-oh.
and and I'm speaking the lingo, but I'm still a white woman, which is interesting. Wanting to pass the other way, right? We're going down all different kinds of threads here.
Right.
I'm curious. You were saying it's only been a handful of years, and I feel like the natural hair movement. Like,
Mm-hmm.
the self-care, self-love, holistic healing, like all of that has been this revolution for women all over the planet, but in particular for women of color, that's really been like, love the skin you're in and work with the hair you got and, all of that. And I know that that's been a big impetus for you in your work. So can you talk more about it?
Yeah, definitely. So, a lot of those things, it wasn't until I was an adult that I realized, all right, I've been taking a lot of these beliefs that, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not good enough, that I'm not enough. And so I think what I did, even while I was still an adolescent, I started to basically translate that into my performance. So I was, extremely active in all these extracurricular activities, smart, did very well in school, got scholarships, went to college, like I just did all of the right things to perform and get this external validation because to me, there was a part of me that felt like, well, I'm not pretty enough. I don't look like such and such, even in, elementary school, I was teased for my lips and my eyes and my nose, whatever. So it was beyond just the complexion. It's like, I look very much like a Black woman. And, and my mother's very much aware of, all these issues. And she was always like, wanting me to feel better about it because she's actually lighter skinned. My mother's lighter than me.
Okay.
And so she, definitely, I think she empathized, but then there were also parts of it where she couldn't completely get. But of course, as for her daughter, her heart was breaking and, she didn't want me to have this, this skewed view of myself. But really, I think that part of that, because I just kind of believed like, okay, well, I guess I'm not pretty enough or, the external thing is not going to be good enough. So let me go ahead and just be this, ultimate achiever. And I think a lot of that started as basically because that was something that I felt like I could control. And it was, I was good at it. I was very smart.
Exactly. And I think women and men, but women in particular can really relate to this. I think this is part of why we're seeing a lot of burnout with women, because they're in overdrive with what we would call like your masculine energy. And so, you have masculine and feminine energy within you, yin and yang or yin and yang. And at any given moment, you're operating in one piece or the other, in the putting out the action or allowing yourself to receive, really going through the strategy and like doing the work. And the other side is like the rest and the nurturing. And ideally we would have all of that operating at one time. But what we're seeing right now and as a modern woman in society is we have so many demands on us. Plus we have so much repressed healing that needs to take place and repressed trauma that we're seeing now is like bubbling to the surface. We can't take it anymore. We're just like, it's like, it's reminding me of whatever the 1960s when they're like, the women are burning their bras. It's like, what the hell are we going to start burning down? I mean, like patriarchy is crumbling, but we need to like literally, it's funny. It just literally came to me. I'm like, we need a new, like burn our bra. Like, what are we going to do?
Yeah, something.
Like, screw you. Screw all of this. Like
we all have to have our, I don't know if we can cuss, but just like give zero fucks moment. Like we literally have to, I think everyone has to have that moment individually because until you get there, you're not really free. And it is definitely a process. I know for me, I had it even while I was still in corporate America, which again has its own rules that again are very white male, driven and created, if you will. And so I always stuck out as a sore thumb. I pretty much was the only Black woman in this entire company. I was the only Black woman in leadership. And, thankfully I worked with amazing people. And, I think to a certain extent too, like men don't necessarily have the same hangups as women. So there were certain things that they didn't really care about or really think about. But, I was always very conscious of like, okay, I know that I'm getting ready to represent at a job fair, or I'm going to this event or whatever. Let me not have my hair fluffy. Let me try to tame it a little bit.
I gotta look the part.
Yeah, I gotta look the part. And then, I just got to a point where it was like, fuck it. Like, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm tired. This is what it is. And I'm tired of having to always be in, the masculine energy, which you were describing, of just always achieving and doing and performing. And I was just over it. And also too, I was at the cusp of just healing, my own skin and recognizing that there were other things, being able to see the products and things that I was putting in my hair, the different things that I was eating, how that was affecting my skin and even my mood. And so that really, awakened me to just from a greater perspective and a holistic perspective of like, gosh, all these things that we're doing to ourselves in order to assimilate and fit in is really not good for us. And I just was tired of it and was like, no more. So, that was really how I kind of got to where I am now.
Right. And so I want to dig into where you are now, because I have like a sidebar question, but I'm trying to decide which way will I go? Will I go right? Will I go left? Let me sit with that. Let me figure it out. Okay. Well, what I wanted to talk about was for people listening who are like, I love Keandra. I love her spirit. I can totally relate to this. To me, what you're describing is the path to really embracing your true authentic self, right? Yeah. Of that self-love journey, that self-acceptance journey, that I don't give any fuck about it journey, right? Which in our community, is so alive and well. And we are like cheering each other on with that. Like, hell yeah, I'm with you and I'm with you. And okay, I'm with you. And look what I did today. And what's true is that when you're in that space of like, I'm stepping into my truth, I'm speaking my truth, I'm showing up in my power, I'm claiming what's mine, you also have a lot of stuff that starts falling apart around you, because whether it's the people or your work or whatever, like they've been set up in a very fragile paradigm of this old model that we've been taught is the way we're supposed to be. And they're holding on for dear life. Like, I don't want this to change because it's too scary for me. And so when you show up in your full power and you're speaking a new language and you're vibrating and shining and all this stuff, and I'm like, what the hell is going on with her? There's so much pushback, right? There's a lot of pushback that you start to receive. And so for those that are listening who are in that space of like, either it is scary for me to step into my full greatness because I'm afraid I'm going to leave people behind, or have gone ahead and started to really embrace their voice and their power and have noticed that now they have to cut people out of their circle, or that people are hating on them all of a sudden. I know you've had a lot of experience with this. Do you have like one or two key pieces of advice of how to handle that?
Yeah, no, I love that. And I've, heard the expression before of, once your freedom basically reminds other people of their own chains. And so that is just something that is going to be regardless. It's interesting because I wouldn't necessarily say that I've arrived. I'm certainly still on the journey of, people who were once in my life in one particular way are no longer there, and they've, kind of fallen away naturally, right. Or I just kind of now know where to position them. But really, what I would say is you deserve to be free. You deserve to be yourself. And when you really start that journey, for everything that you lose, you really will gain 5-10 times more than what you thought that you lost, or what you thought is that you're losing. You know, I can say that for certain friends that I thought would be, you know, my besties through up until our, you know, elderly years. And they're, you know, no longer in my life. But they've been replaced with such genuine, good people who can truly support me at the place that I'm in my life, and we're able to really give each other what we need. And in regards to that encouragement of, you know, just keep going. Like, it gets hard. There are people who are going to project their fears on you and project their unbelief. And, you know, you have to just, you may have those moments of the doubt. Like, I think that, you know, everyone does. I don't know that it'll ever go away because I still experience it. But, you know, in those moments of doubt, you'll have a small reminder of like, okay, this is why I'm put here to do this work, or this is why I'm feeling led to share this particular story, or share this blog post, or speak, or whatever it is that you're doing to express, you know, that true part of you. You know, someone is going to appreciate it. Someone is going to say thank you. There is going to be some level of impact that will remind you and encourage you along the way of like, you're on the right path. And so, you know, again, there's still things and things that are being stripped away from me, my own identity, my own clarity of who I am and whose belief that I take on versus what I really believe about myself. Even certain things with my mother, you know, have had to be challenged in her regards to what's success. You know, I don't have children yet. I'm not married yet. But happiness and fulfillment, and just so all of those different things. And of course, I love my mother to death, but, you know, we've even had our own journey and evolution of like, okay, you know, this is, she's really being her true self. And now she's able to see it and appreciate it. But really, you know, I just think, all that you think that you're going to lose, it really will be replaced. And I think it's not really genuine and really real until you're being really real. And so until you can allow that false sense or the mask or whatever it is that you're carrying and holding on to for the sake of someone else, you know, you're not going to really get the real you, or, you know, those blessings that are meant for you. They can't come until you're free, you're really free and really expressing and showing up in your truth. And so, you know, like I said, it's scary. I'm still on the journey. There are still those moments of doubts, but I know that I've definitely evolved, and the people who are meant to be with you will still be with you. Those are the ones where you will have another level of gratitude for them and be able to cherish for them, and even have another layer of just, I guess, deepness and depth to the relationship, because you can see, wow, we've been able to stand, you know, this growth and this new expression of myself, or, you know, the babies, the divorce, the breakups, the deaths, the whatever, you know, when you're able to look over your life and see those friendships that have been with you through all of those tests and times, or relationships just in general, when you can see those people who are still there, you cherish them and you see them just completely differently. And they also then get inspired and encouraged by you. So it's just worth it. It's totally worth it. And yeah.
So good. And if they're looking for some friends, if they got to ditch all their friends and come find some new ones, they can hang out with us in the Superfly community.
Absolutely.
Come on
Absolutely.
over.
I think this is truly one of the most realist communities. It's so diverse, you know, and where people are able to just be themselves no matter what. It's amazing.
Yeah,
so
we just let it all hang out, and I don't know. It's interesting. It's like, it's a no judgment zone, and also like, come with what you got, as long as you're coming from love, as long as you're coming from a positive place. We're going to support you. If you start being a hater or hating on others, we're like, we don't do that here. You need to step to the side.
Right.
Before we get into like the speed round, where I just want to throw some questions right at you, I have one more question, which is, you've worked with me for a long time, so you know how I roll. I like to have tangible action steps. I like to have, you know, something that people can listen and be like, okay, that was an amazing interview, and I got these very specific things that I could do right now. And so I'd love to talk about, if you have 3 tips or 3 things that you have done or are doing in terms of, and it can come from a place of the best ways to take care of yourself or the best ways to love yourself, or, you know, really this piece that we're talking about stepping into your authentic self. Like, what would you recommend? And it could be directed towards healing. It could be directed towards, you know, whatever you want. But what would be like, if I could tell you anything, I would say, do these 3 things that will change your life.
Let's see. Okay, 3 things. Well, I feel like with anything, my biggest, if I had to sum it all, to me, I kind of sum it all up in one word, and really it's expression. And so whatever it is that you need to do to either express your pain, whether that is writing it down, you know, in your journal and then burning it later, whether it's going directly to the person who may have hurt you, or, you know, going to the gym and punching it out, whatever it is that you need to do to express it, you have to express it and get it out. And so there is no healing until you're able to really be true about, this is what I'm broken from. This is what hurt me. This is why I'm in pain. And so that has to be expressed, and it also has to be fully acknowledged by you. You have to accept it, that this is where I am, and this is who I am, and this is what I'm dealing with. And
that's a good one. So just to clarify, number 1 is that self-expression. Finding whatever way, and it can evolve every day. It could be different, but whatever way you're able to tap into yourself and really get out of yourself whatever it is that you want to put into the world, whether it's things out of your head, whether it's writing, whether it's speaking, whether it's, you know, like releasing energy out of you through movement, and claiming that piece of yourself that is conscious and aware and is looking at, you know, this is what's coming up for me. This is the work that I still have to do. And you kept saying, you know, you're a work in progress, and I am too. And I'm a firm believer in, like, we don't ever really arrive. Like, if we arrive, I think that's when God's like, okay, thank you. It's time to come back home. You know, like, you did what you were supposed to do. Let's move on to the next lifetime. So is there another thing that you would say
another thing I would say is get help, and, you know, get around people who have the best in me and want the best for you. There is nothing that I have accomplished in isolation. The journey of my healing was not done in isolation, and it definitely wasn't done by myself. I sought out the therapists, the coaches. I invested in myself. And so I didn't sit around and wait for, you know, just this miracle, or even take a passive approach with getting to the next step of, you know, my own evolution. And so I just really encourage people to partner with someone, because we're not meant to do life alone. We're really not. And so I think having, you know, good sister friends, and, you know, even male friends and fathers and mothers, like we need them all. We need each other. And so I just definitely suggest doing it with someone.
We cannot do it alone. Okay. So number 1 is express yourself. Number 2 is get some support. You're not alone. Find your circle of support. So last piece of amazing wisdom, drop the knowledge right now.
Dropping the knowledge. You know, for me, I really feel like it is just to have fun. You know, it's interesting because one of the questions that you had sent out of just kind of prepping of some directions that we could potentially go. And one of them was, what is it that you would tell yourself, you know, when you were younger, I think, or some variation of that question. And really it's for me, because there was a moment, because I was such this high achiever, and I was very driven and so focused and work focused, that I didn't just take the time to just be and to just have fun. You know, I really didn't start embracing that until, you know, my later 20s and, you know, early 30s. And now I'm in my later 30s. But I just realized that life is so precious and it's meant to be enjoyed. And we do not know when we are going to, you know, leave this earth. And so do just in every moment, try to cherish it. Of course, you know, life has its ups and downs, and it's not always going to be fun and exhilarating. And, you know, life can get hard, and there's, you know, shit gets real. But, you know, life, I do believe, is meant to be enjoyed. So allow the fun and the pleasure to also be a part of I guess your guiding way of, letting you know, like, what's the path that you should go down? What feels good? What lights you up? What
Yes.
sets you on fire? Like, don't ignore that, and allow yourself to enjoy it, to
Right.
feel good and to be good.
Get yours. Get
Get
yours. Let your hair down. Let it go wild. Get your orgasm. Eat your
Yes.
chocolate. Go
Yes.
run down the beach. Wear that bikini if you want to.
Yes.
Just get free. Definitely.
Get it.
Amazing. So good. I love hanging out with you. And every time I'm talking to my ladies, I'm like, we could just keep talking and talking. I'm like, we haven't even touched upon a lot of the things that I want to talk about, but that just means we're going to have to come back and do this all over again and go weave in a new direction. So I'm going to hit you real quick with the speed round, and we're going to close up this conversation for today, knowing that we may open it back up again very soon and pick up on part 2. So let's just hit this speed round, and then we will be all set. So here we go.
Right.
Religion or spirituality?
Spirituality.
Okay. In person or online?
Ooh, in person.
You felt emphatic about that one.
Yeah.
Okay. And very soon I'm going to be in person with you. I'm going to get to hug you. I can't wait.
Yes.
And be in a bikini running down the beach.
Right. Running down the beach.
Okay. Speaking or writing?
Writing.
Coffee, chocolate, or wine? Or all?
All. Oh my God. And chocolate and wine, they're like such a good pairing. And then there's some coffees that have a chocolate like flavor that I like.
There you go.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Sleep or sex?
Sex, then sleep.
on my other interview, they said, we came up with this formula. We said, okay, you go to the bed, you have your chocolate and your wine,
right,
and then you have your sex, and then you sleep, and then you have your coffee.
There we go. Love it. And here,
and so it is.
And so it is.
Okay, 4 more here to go. Your guiding word of this year is
abundance.
The key to healing is
expression.
What the world needs most right now is
truth.
I love this. Oh, I got goosebumps. Okay. And last but not least, it's your last day on earth, or maybe you already passed over, the legacy that you're leaving behind. What do you want them to say about you as you're departing?
I want people to have, I'm big on the way that people feel when they're around me. So to feel accepted, to feel loved, and to be okay and at peace with themselves. I really want people to feel that when they're around me. I want that to be what is reflected in the work that I do, is to really just be good and at peace with yourself and feel that I can, provide that or be an extension of that for people. That's, to me, it's everything. Be at peace with who you are.
Yes, right?
Yes.
Okay, so as we wrap up our conversation today, I always like it when people ask me, is there anything that I wanted to say? Because sometimes you have just like, I just have one more thing I want to get out. Is there anything on your heart, anything for the good of the group here?
If there isn't anything that's coming up, I'm just pleasantly pleased with even just the direction of the conversation. I will say again, and just reflecting back of thanking you for just you being who you are and your realness and giving me the permission to just share, certain things. I don't know who will see this interview, it may let you in on some parts that you may not have known about me, and things that I've actually said, I've never really said on a public platform before. But, again, I'm kind of in this zero fucks place.
That's right. And that's what I'm here for. I'm trying to draw it out because we're having all these conversations behind closed doors. You tell me all kinds of stuff. And then when you put out your video, I'm like, wait, she didn't say the thing about that.
Yeah.
And so a lot of what we're talking about is about bringing more truth into the world and having people feel more comfortable in their self-expression, and also sharing their stories of darkness or obstacles or failures or the reality of what's really going on, because I think it's doing a disservice to the planet if we keep, you know, faking it like everything's all good, when in reality it's not all good for a lot of people. And if we want to make a positive change in the world, we got to start together. We got to start doing it right now, and we got to know what's really going on with people. So I just am so grateful. Thank you so much for your time. I know for a fact that many people will be moved and inspired and activated by our conversation today. So sending you so much love, so many blessings.
Love you too.
Talk to you soon.